Good morning, everybody. It is Monday, September 9th, 2024. We are at a Commissioners Workshop meeting live at City Hall, Commissioners Room, second floor. I'd like to call this meeting to order at exactly 9 o'clock a.m. Would you please rise and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll start off with roll call. Commissioner Don Preston.
Here.
Commissioner Tony Sharp, absent. Commissioner Ed Chernowski.
Present.
Commissioner Patrick Gossett.
Here.
Commissioner Tim Bennett, absent. Commissioner Bunky Markert.
Here.
Mayor Stan Mills here, and we have a quorum and are able to formally conduct business today. Thank you all for being here. I'd also like to recognize the staff that's here. Judge Renee Bennett's here. Former Public Works Director Kevin Williams is here. Henry Matlos is here from the Public Works Department. Assistant City Manager Evan Miller. Of course, City Manager Taylor Tedder, City Solicitor Alex Burns, Chief Keith Banks, and a whole slew of police officers. Thank you all for being here today. Did I miss anybody? Lynn Cohen, Communications Specialist back there. Thank you all for being here today. We're going to make note that we want to thank all those that are watching virtually, and we want to thank those that are here in person. We always promote citizen feedback. So as you know, during certain agenda topics, we have an opportunity for citizen input. We have a 3-minute limit, and it's one time per topic. And then later in the agenda, toward the end, there's a citizen comment period, and that is for non-agenda comments. So things that are not on the agenda. It also has the same limitations and time constraints on it. With that, we are going to move on to presentation of a proclamation recognizing Ovarian Cancer Month. Vice President will join me, and we have 2 guests here to join us also. We're going to have you stand right in the middle of us. Good morning. Good morning.
Glasses on here. Proclamation Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, September 2024, whereas ovarian cancer is the deadliest of all female reproductive system cancers, and whereas the American Cancer Society estimates that in 2024, nearly 20,000 women will be newly diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and whereas in 2024, it is estimated that approximately 12,740 women will die in the United States from ovarian cancer. Many women are not diagnosed until the disease has begun to spread. But if the disease is detected in its earliest stage, stage 1, the 5-year survival rate is more than 92%. The symptoms of ovarian cancer are often subtle and easily confused with other ailments. And whereas 1 in 87 women will be diagnosed with ovarian cancer during their lifetime, and whereas during Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, we honor the loved ones we have lost to this disease and all those who battle it today. And we continue our work to improve care and raise awareness about ovarian cancer. And whereas that it is why it is important that all women pay attention to their bodies and know what is normal for them. Women who experience unexplained changes, including abdominal pain, pressure, and swelling, should talk with their healthcare providers. And whereas the ovarian cancer and the hardship it brings have affected too many lives. This September, we stand with everyone who has been troubled by this disease, and we recognize all those committed to advancing the fight against this cancer through research, advocacy, and quality care. And now, therefore, Mayor Stan Mills and Board Vice President Patrick Gossett do hereby proclaim September 2024 as Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month. Together, let us renew our commitment to reducing the impact of ovarian cancer and a future free from cancer in all its form. Proclaim this 9th day of September 2024.
I'd like these two ladies to introduce themselves, and then I'll introduce them. Okay.
Good morning. My name is Jan Gilmore. I am an 11-year ovarian cancer survivor. I'm very fortunate to be here, and I'm very grateful for all of the support. When we turned the town teal in Rehoboth, someone asked me why this is important, and it's because everybody who is touched by ovarian cancer is very grateful for the visual support and the community support that you all provide. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Mary Molletier. I live in Milton, Delaware. 24 years ago, my mother passed from ovarian cancer. 22 years ago, my vigilant gynecologist discovered that I had it, so I am a 22-year survivor. And I have 2 daughters. That's why it's important to me.
They did a good enough introduction of themselves. Thank you, Patty.
Thank you so much.
With that, next we'll move on to a swearing in ceremony for Officer Devin Maciejewski of the Rehoboth Beach Police Department. Chief and Judge.
All right. Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners, General Public, and I'd just like to say thank you to our county officials here, and I say state official in the back. It's always a pleasure to have them in the room with us. So welcome, everyone. To continue with our tradition to do a swearing in of all the new hires with the police department, today with us we have Devin Maciejewski. If you want to come up front for swearing in, and along with Judge Bennett, and join at the podium to hold the Bible is Miss Marianne Jones. I had the opportunity to meet Devin's parents at graduation, and they're very supportive and very happy that he's with the Rehoboth Beach Police Department. A little about Devin, if I could. Like many of our full-time police officers, Patrolman Maciejewski came through us through our seasonal officer program. We had the pleasure of working with him during our 22-23 summer seasons. During that time, he honed his skills while assigned to our bicycle patrol unit. This past fall, he applied for and was accepted as a full-time police officer with our department. He attended the Dover Police Academy and graduated on August 29th. I was pleased to learn that while attending the academy, Patrolman Maciejewski took his studies seriously and received the academic award for achieving the highest GPA among his academic classmates. He now joins the Rehoboth Beach Police Department in the City of Rehoboth Beach, where he can apply all that he has learned and embark on this exciting and honorable journey that is being a member of law enforcement. Devin, congratulations and welcome.
Repeat after me.
Yes, ma'am.
I, and state your full name,
I, Devin Quinn Maciejewski,
do voluntarily enter into service with the Rehoboth Beach Police Department
into service with the Rehoboth Beach Police Department
as a police officer
as a police officer
on this, the 9th day
on this, the 9th day
of September in the year 2024.
of September in the year of 2024.
I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that as long as I am employed
that as long as I am employed
by the Rehoboth Beach Police Department,
by the Rehoboth Beach Police Department,
I will bear true faith
I will bear true faith
and allegiance
and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States of America,
to the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the State of Delaware,
the Constitution of the State of Delaware,
and the Charter of the City of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware.
and the Charter of the City of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware.
I promise to faithfully
I promise to faithfully
and impartially
and impartially
discharge and perform
all the duties
incumbent on me as a police officer
incumbent upon me as a police officer
for the City of Rehoboth Beach
for the City of Rehoboth Beach
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you, ma'am.
Devin and Judge, Your Honor, if we could have you back up, and the mayor maybe for a couple photos, I would appreciate it. don't have,
The piece shop you in later.
I've had photos earlier with them. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And I'd also like to recognize Senator Russ Huxtable. If you raise your hand higher, there you go, and get you recognized. Thank you for being here today. And also our Finance Director, Bert Dukes, in the very back corner. Raise your hand. I either overlooked at you or you snuck in. Thank you for being here. Next on our agenda is correspondence. None has been identified. With that, we'll move on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, members of the public and commissioners. The first item I want to mention this morning is the Rehoboth Avenue repaving project. ADEL, the contractor on the Rehoboth Avenue repaving project, is finishing up work at Shuttle Road on a project there. So they're not anticipating work starting until about October 1st. So as a reminder, the first few weeks of work will be on crosswalks and curbing, and then the repaving is just a simply mill and overlay where the top surface is milled off and then the new pavement is laid in its place within 7 days of being milled. So we'll look at October 1st is when that starts beginning. The State Road Pump Station, I'm happy to report that reconstruction project is mostly completed. The city will conduct a walkthrough on September 12th with the general contractor and our construction management contractor, GHD, and the construction chain link fence will be replaced with the 6-foot white vinyl fence in early October. We want to acknowledge the Rehoboth Beach Rotary Club's generous donation of 5 AEDs to the city. 4 of these life-saving devices have been installed along or near the boardwalk at Maryland, Rehoboth, and Delaware Avenues, as well as Laurel Street. The 5th AED will be installed at the new Beach Patrol Headquarters when it's completed. And the local Rotary Club worked with the Southern Sussex and Long Neck Rotary Clubs, as well as Bay Health, to make these donations possible. So very excited about having this to offer for folks walking down the boardwalk. The dune crossing mats, you may have heard, the city's testing out the new dune crossing accessibility mats at Rehoboth Avenue. These new Cocoa Path mats are weather and slip resistant, and they're also providing accessibility for foot and wheelchair traffic. We're really anxious to see how these hold up, and we'll actually leave these out through the winter to help with testing them. Thanks to Representative Pete Schwarzkopf for assisting us in attaining a community transportation fund grant to help try these new mats out and purchase 3 additional beach wheelchairs. And by the way, speaking of the beach wheelchairs, while the beach lifeguard season does continue for a couple of weeks, the beach wheelchairs have been retired for the season. And then I do want to extend congratulations to Paul Hynett, our Assistant Superintendent in the Wastewater Department. He's President-elect of the Water and Wastewater Operator Association of Maryland, Delaware, and the District of Columbia, and will assume his presidential duties in August 2025, so congratulations to him. And that concludes my report this morning, and I am here for any questions you may have.
One question, could you describe what role DelDOT plays in the resurfacing project on Rehoboth Avenue?
Sure, I'll have our Public Works Director, Henry Matlos, go into detail on that for you.
Good morning. Commissioner, so it's a DelDOT project run by the state. ADEL is the general contractor for it. KCI is the construction management firm, but ADEL is the one that is actually performing the work.
Is there a role that the city plays in this? I know the state owns a certain part of Rehoboth Avenue, so who is control of timing, starts, stops, this type of thing? Is it a joint project? Who has the final word?
Being a state project, well, we've been working very closely with KCI and with the and with the state. They're going to as the city manager mentioned, they're going to start with the concrete, which is pretty standard in projects like this, and then move to the mill and paving. The intent is to start at the drawbridge, head east, and the two blocks the easterly 2 blocks of Rehoboth is City Street, and Adel will be doing that work, but it was in the CIP for us to pay them for that work.
Thanks.
Could you also just cover what times of day the work will be happening, and then what efforts the city has made to mitigate any disruption with folks that live and work on Rehoboth Avenue?
Sure. The work will be from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Really, the key on this is communications. We've been several times a week, even this early in the game, speaking with the Del Dot about it. The communications manager will be putting updates in the reach@rehoboth.com. Letters have gone out to all residents and business owners on the area, and we're going to do our best. I know it's an inconvenience for everyone. It hasn't been done in 20 years, and it'll be a good project once it's done.
Thank you.
And I do think one really important thing to note, especially for our businesses on Rehoboth Avenue, is that 20 years ago, it was a full reconstruction project with the streetscaping, and this is simply just a mill and overlay like you see on many streets that's done every 5-10 years, where they just take the top surface off the first 2-3 inches and then lay it back down.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else? City manager? Anything else for you? With that, we'll move on to the city solicitor's report.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners, members of the public. Good morning. I just have a quick update today. The last meeting I spoke about 330 Hospitality Group. That is a rezoning case. Recall that there was a rezoning application for 330 Rehoboth Avenue. It was denied by the city and made its way to Superior Court. And in July, the Superior Court issued an order remanding the case to the city. And since that time, the petitioners have appealed to the Supreme Court of Delaware. And so we'll see what the Supreme Court does. Typically, a court will make a decision within 90 days. So perhaps sometime by December, we'll hear from the Supreme Court how to proceed. But at this time, there has not been a hearing scheduled.
So we're on hiatus as far as scheduling and appeals.
So
hearing.
we're on hiatus for scheduling a new hearing for the rezoning application, yes. Mm-hmm.
Any further questions? Anything else?
Just briefly, on September 3rd, the city published public notice regarding a Bellhaven appeal to the Board of Adjustment from the Planning Commission's decision. So more to come on that one, but perhaps there will be a hearing on September 30th in that matter.
And Alex, that hearing would be heard by this body, correct?
So that would be a hearing before the Board of Adjustment.
Okay.
Bellhaven has also appealed to the commissioners, but that is a separate appeal. Yeah.
Do you have any idea on timing of that?
It depends how, it depends, yeah.
Well, it's a two-step deal, correct? They have to go through the Board of Adjustment case first and conclude that before we schedule it and take it up as an appeal.
That's right.
It could be that they're satisfied with the conclusion, and then that's it, correct? Anything else?
That's all.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else? Thank you very much. With that, we're going to go to old business, discuss joint request by the Lewes Board of Public Works and Sussex County exploring a three-way regional wastewater partnership among the two organizations and the City of Rehoboth Beach. There are some support documents embedded prior to this meeting into the agenda. I think the process today, Todd, would be we'll have Sussex County go first, and then the Board of Public Works, or maybe you tag team. Then we'll have opportunity for Rehoboth Beach to make comments. We'll come up to the commissioners for any questions they might have to be responded to by the three parties. And then public comment would be toward the end. And we'll see how time goes. I'm willing to suggest that this is important enough a topic where we allow for maybe up to 6 minutes public comment in up to 2 sessions. So we'll review that when we get to that point. With that, we'll turn it over to Todd.
Mayor, if I may ask, what do we hope to accomplish today? What is the results that we require?
We hope to learn the responses to questions you posed and anybody else posed. And then my expectation is there'll still be some thought to be given to this. And that, what do you think, that at the October meeting, we would have a workshop, that we would have additional discussion and possibly at that meeting determine whether to go to a vote at the October regular meeting. Do you want to add anything?
Commissioner Gossett, we also will be looking at doing a very abbreviated capacity study with Hazen and Sawyer. So we will also plan to have them come back and present in the October meeting.
Anybody else? Thank you very much. Todd,
All right, thank you, Mayor. Good morning. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners.
reintroduce yourselves.
Certainly.
If you would.
My name's Todd Lawson. I am the Sussex County Administrator, and I'm joined here by members of our team, and I'll ask President Tom Panetta to introduce his team. We're going to do a joint response and walk ourselves through this PowerPoint, which was in your packet. Before I begin, though, I'd like to introduce the county team, starting with President Mike Vincent, President of County Council. We have Gina Jennings, our COO and Finance Director. Mike Harmer is our County Engineer. And Hans Medlar is our County Engineer, retired.
And my name is Tom Panetta. I'm the president of the Lewes Board of Public Works. And with us, we have 3 members of the board, Richard Nichols, Preston Lee, and Barbara Curtis in the back. We have representatives from the Lewes City Council, Mayor Andrew Williams and Tim Ritzert. And I'd like to introduce Russ Huxtable here. And I think, oh, I'm sorry. The brains behind the operation, Austin Kalaman, who's our general manager. That's everyone? Okay.
All right, so as you saw in your packet, we developed a PowerPoint that is in response to questions that this team received. I believe most of the questions were from Commissioner Gossett as a result of the July 8th presentation that we made. So we thank you for these questions, and what we've developed in response is this PowerPoint, which is really our start of a conversation. Hopefully, we will have more questions today from you all. We hope this is a dialogue format whereby if you hear something, interrupt us and ask a question or a clarification. We want as much information conveyed to you all as we can. And really, maybe if I may, to answer the question that was posed earlier, what do you hope to get out of this today? Hopefully, we hope that you get a better understanding of what we're asking for you to consider, a better understanding of our proposal, And then ultimately, we would like to seek a decision by the city related to this proposal at some point in the future. Part of that is scoped out in our responses as well. So with that, I am going to use the PowerPoint to go through each of the questions. Mr. Panetta and I will respond, and then if we need to call upon our team, which I'm sure we will, we'll ask them to come forward as well. And again, what we did was we basically cut and paste the question that was provided to us, listed here on the slide as Rehoboth's question, and then we provided a response to that. You can tell the responses are fairly short because, quite honestly, at this stage, some information we do not have. Some information is too much for a PowerPoint, and if we need to get into further details, that's why we want to present that today and we will respond to any questions asked. Okay? So, we good?
Yeah, I think it's fine.
All right, so first question was, how is our current agreement with Sussex County impacted? How is the current sewer and biosolids agreement with Rehoboth and Sussex impacted? The answer is it will not be impacted. What we propose is to have a separate agreement that will mirror the terms of the current agreement. The current agreement's terms are 25 years with a second 25-year extension, the first 25 years ending in 2042 and the second renewal ending in 2067. So it would be our intent to draft an agreement using all of our legal teams and engineering teams that would mirror the terms that we currently have. Obviously, an agreement like this is of such a magnitude that we would want enough years in it to make sense, if not even to say it's in perpetuity, because you don't make these arrangements now and think that they would end at a date certain.
Yeah, and the other thing I would add to that is, as Todd said, the agreement that you have with Sussex County is between the two parties. The tripatriate agreement, we would look for in perpetuity with renewal periods and some sort of caveats. But once we demolish our plant, we have nowhere else to go. So we don't want to hamper future boards in the year 2067 with having to then go and acquire land, build a new plant. So we would be looking for something that did guarantee in perpetuity access.
All right. I'm going to continue through these slides unless someone raises their hand and asks a question. Next question was term of the agreement. The length suggested to be in perpetuity. Is this agreement with Sussex only? What's the role of the Lewes BPW once the plant is decommissioned? We touched on a little bit of this. Our response is we're proposing a capacity agreement, and you can use whatever word you want, but we're proposing an agreement whereby, as Mr. Panetta said, all three parties, Rehoboth, Sussex, and Lewes, enter into this agreement, and we will be paying Rehoboth for additional capacity, i.e. the ability to put additional effluent through the outfall. We're calling it a capacity agreement. As I mentioned, the same terms, i.e. the length of years of the current agreement would apply to this new agreement. It would be a tri-agreement with Lewes and Sussex County, and Lewes BPW will fund a percentage of that agreement, and Lewes BPW, because their effluent will be, or their flow will be treated at our Wolf Neck treatment operations, they will have review oversight of the treatment facility at the Wolf Neck location.
No, I think that's perfect, Todd. Thank you.
Will that flow from Lewes into Wolf Neck be metered?
Yes, we have a similar agreement with Sussex County as you do. So we have a separate contract. Currently, we accept flow, currently we accept flow from Sussex County, and we would basically reverse that agreement. And later on, you'll see the flows.
The next question posed was the treatment standards, TMDL. What does the current Rehoboth Beach NPDES permit require? What would the new Wolf Neck permit require? In response, any questions about the Rehoboth permit, Rehoboth staff will be able to provide commissioners information related to your current operational permit that you have issued. And the county, our intentions are to design the new Wolf Neck regional wastewater facility to meet or exceed the Rehoboth current plant performance. In other words, we're going to build the treatment plant so that we're performing exactly the way that Rehoboth is performing when it comes to the permit. That way, there's no difference in the standards of the effluent going through the outfall.
But currently, our permits do not specify nutrient levels. We report them, but there's no minimum or maximum required by the permit. How is that affected with new permitting?
I will turn to our engineer.
I'm Hans Medlars, county engineer retired. If the DNRC permit, the NPDES permit, which is also a federal permit, reflect the same kind of conditions, it would be essentially, we already run a BNR plant, biological nutrient removal plant in South Coastal. So it would be the same facility or a similar facility designed to parameters which would guarantee us that we meet the same requirements you have right now. So it's easy for you to look into the rearview mirror and see you have an oxidation leach facility, you have a certain hydraulic residence time, and I know your treatment parameters. So we can design it so we have slightly more flexibility and can guarantee that we meet the same total nitrogen, total phosphorus numbers.
What about emerging contaminants? How will you address those?
Just like you do.
So expand on that, please.
I mean, like we would have to, as they come up, we have to modify our treatment process. You know, like we do not, you cannot design for something we don't know yet. But the facilities.
But there are EPA standards that will, coming forward, that we need to review and be aware of.
And they would apply to the new permit at Wolf Neck, obviously, if they are in play. But right now, they're not in play. Now, we know some things like carbon filtration will do certain things, right? So that can be added to. I have designed and built some filtration facilities which included a carbon layer. You don't have one right now, no. But we could certainly build that in. So that's a ability we have you do not have yet, because if you had to modify your filters, you know your head would not work. You have to build new, slightly different filters to do that.
Correct.
So we would have the luxury to have more flexibility, and whatever the permit reads, obviously we will have to do. But I'm somewhat reluctant to even talk about like PFAS, for example, because we do not know what the limitations are of the receiving body.
No, but we know there's something coming for certain.
There's something coming, but it will depend on which body you discharge to.
Right.
So, and it's so that there are a couple of players here. So if we were to discharge onto the land, it's different than we discharge into the canal.
But we're in the canal, or not the canal, we'll be into the ocean. Yes. Thank you.
Todd, we may have some laypersons here watching or watching virtually. So when you come across a abbreviation, if you would explain what that is, TMDL, NPDES.
The TMDL is the total maximum daily loads, which both permits are based on. Like all of our permits, which are NPDES permits, are load-based, and they have, you have an equivalent flow base, which is based on the performance of the facility and the loads you're given. So you calculate it backwards and you can come up with a flow. And that is one of Commissioner Gossett's later questions, is what are the flows? But these flows are really based on backwards calculations. So when it comes to the BNR, that's the biological nutrient removal, this is how when you design a facility, you have it, so there's nitrification and denitrification, which allows you to remove nitrogen. So, and the same applies how you calculate your recirculation flows, so you can select phosphorus-reducing bacteria, which allows you to reduce the phosphorus in the effluent, and it binds it in the biosolids. So these are terms we use in the design process, but the facility would apply both the total nitrogen and a total phosphorus for removal capabilities on the biological side. If you needed to meet more stringent requirements, they wouldn't be BNR, they would be chemical. So if you do a chemical addition, you can take more phosphorus out. If you do a denitrification filter, you would take more nitrogen out. These are things you would apply when you were going into a more stringent body, such as the canal or the inland bays. So that's, pardon me? NPDES, National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, which is an acronym which has been around since the 70s when EPA intended to eliminate all discharge pollution, which obviously the water has to go somewhere, so it's a misnomer, but it's stuck. It's not an elimination, it's really a reduction system. Did I miss one? No.
I think you're good. Now you see why we won't let him retire. Okay. Next question was, proposed treatment technology used at Wolf Neck plant, the consideration of AGS. Thank you. And we spelled it out here. Aerobic granulated sludge process. Thank you. That was a question. I think we read that to mean, would we consider that technology? And because the county will use the extended aeration with a BNR, which Hans just said is biologic nutrient removal, since we're using BNR components similar, if not identical, to South Coastal Regional Wastewater Facility and the current Rehoboth process, we would not consider AGS at the Wolf Neck site. AGS was also brought up during the consideration of one of Lewis's Board of Public Works discussion.
So Barbara Curtis led a subcommittee for Lewes looking at alternative technologies, and AGS is one of the ones that came up. AGS is an excellent technology if you have limited footprints. Wolf Neck, we do not have a limited footprint. It is more energy efficient, but Wolf Neck is installing 5 megawatts of solar. Yeah. So, there are other means of offsetting it. AGS is a more expensive technology, so that's why I think collectively, given the Wolf Neck site, the existing facilities with the lagoons, and the ability to meet the, and I'm not going to use the term NPDES, but limits, we can do it with both technologies.
Okay. So obviously a question for everyone is a time frame, and this is one of the questions where we really don't have a good idea of the time frame. The question posed to us was A, B, C, D, and E in the stages of time. In general, it's difficult to predict this right now because we're dealing with other agencies that will have to provide these permits, including DNREC and the Army Corps as probably the two leads. Anyone that's dealt with DNREC recently knows that whether you're looking for a boat dock permit or a very large wastewater treatment facility, it takes a matter of months, if not years. We just received a permit that helps us at our Inland Bays plant for construction and expansion, and it took over 6 years to receive that permit. So we don't really have a good idea with that, but we did list here maybe some ballpark ideas related to the process. If we get a agreement and some positive direction from Rehoboth and we start the process soon, we would suggest that we would go out in 2026 for an RFP for our treatment plant at Wolf Neck, and then 27 for our construction of the connection from Wolf Neck to the effluent force main. In 26, we would apply for our DNREC and Army Corps permit. And then after that review process, and we don't know how long that will take, and assuming it's successful, upon that successful approval and the awards for contracts, we would move forward, and project would be online by 2029, and then once everything is up, running, and flowing, Lewes BPW could then decommission their wastewater treatment plant. So as best we can tell you today, with all the parameters that we don't really have a good understanding of, here's a ballpark idea of the timing. On timing, and we touch on this in another slide, it is critical, though, that we do seek a decision from you all, one way or the other, and that's something that we hope to get done in the near future. And I'll let Lewes BPW speak towards the timing of their eagerness to get going with the reason we started this process, which is the location of their treatment plan and why they seek alternative locations.
I think we spoke about this at the last workshop. We've been doing this process for about 2.5 years and have hit some major obstacles, finding artifacts, because we were fully down the path of constructive wetlands. But, the artifacts, and that's why, just to reinforce the timing, there are lots of unknowns that could come up during the process. So this is, as Todd said, our best guess at the timing with the permits and other events that could unfold. But from Lewes's perspective, our wastewater treatment plant sits at 6 to 7 feet above sea level. And between sea level rise in 2050, the plant would need to be hardened, or if we have a coastal storm that breached the dune structures on the beach side. And those are unpredictable, and there's actually no modeling that can be done because it depends upon the angle of the storm, the wind speeds, the tides, and everything else. So Lewes is committed to removing the wastewater treatment plant from the floodplain. That will protect not only Lewes, but the entire region, because any overflow or breach would cause contamination. And that's why there's a tremendous sense of urgency in the BPW to move forward. And that's why I had said earlier, we're looking for a commitment. The I's don't have to be dotted and the T's crossed, but by the end of the year, of whether Rehoboth Beach is willing to consider this or not. Otherwise, we're going to have to go, other ways. And there are other alternatives. We just don't think they're the proper ones from a regional perspective. So, thank you.
All right. Next slide is the financial question, financial package. What is our current debt service, rate structure, flow rate? How could this impact, in other words, lower our current sewer rate? So again, anything related to your current debt service on the outfall or the wastewater treatment plant, the Rehoboth staff can provide that information to the commissioners. Our proposal is a one-time lump sum payment of $20 million for up to 5 million gallons per day in capacity. If we get through the process and we are issued successful permits, then we would make that payment and then begin our construction. The City of Rehoboth obviously will take that funding and make that determination on its own on what you choose to do with that $20 million lump sum proposal. Whether it lowers your sewer rate or not, that's entirely up to the commission.
So just putting the information shared in the previous slide, so that 20 million payment based on the outfall permits from DENREC, you're experiencing 6 years now, so we might see that in 2030 at the earliest?
I would hope it's sooner than that.
So would we, but I'm just saying, based on the information that you've supplied, that's kind of the calendar we're looking at?
Well,
No, the permit approvals are over.
Yeah.
Commissioner, the permit approval, talking to some of the DENREC officials, we expect that by the end of '26. So
End of when?
2026. because we have to go through a couple of testing on the Bentic testing. Remember, it requires 2-season testing, so we have to update the testing you have. And so that's a realistic number, so it's not 2030. 2030 will be the full decommissioning of the Lewes facility. The payment is structured based on the permits, not the completion.
And I use the 6 years to illustrate my disdain for DNREC. We also received a permit on another sewer plant project in 2 years, so at our South Coastal.
And I think we're still awaiting our renewal permit, and that's been 5-6 years? I'm speaking for the city.
I happen to know it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that's been about 2.5 years to 3 years that the permit was applied for and have not received yet.
Great, thank you.
And I do also want to add, so it seems like best case scenario around 2027, we may, receive that payment, and it would be up to the Board of Commissioners of what we want to do with that. So we would, of course, bring that back at a later date to discuss how that could be utilized. And then, of course, staff will continue working with our partners here to negotiate how that structure is.
Well, the optimist I am, I look at the 20 million as a minimum. But I think the intent is not to negotiate that up here in front of the public, but to authorize the city manager to work with you all, and what would a final correct number be?
The one thing I would like to point out is that, and you'll see it in a future slide, it says $20 million based upon 5 MGD, a million gallons a day. However, we don't get to that number for many years out. So the payment is actually is the same number for a small amount of money, a smaller amount of flow early on.
Mayor, you're right. Our hope is that the framework we present today will give you a better understanding, and then we can move to the next steps regarding these conversations. And then eventually the details will all be ironed out, and that's going to really take some time and effort. We're not at that point, obviously. We didn't want to get too far over our skis before we hear from you all. Okay, we talked about this a little bit. I moved to the next question. List of state and federal permits required. In response, we would need a new Wolf Neck Regional Wastewater NPDES permit for the new treatment plant. We need a construction permit from DENREC, and that would be for our treatment plant upgrades and effluent force main to connect to the tie-in point. And then we need a DENREC Army Corps subaqueous crossing permit for the connection point at the canal. Mr. Panetta touched on this. Questions about permanent treatment capacity. As Hans also discussed earlier, it's a little tricky to talk about the actual treatment capacity related to millions of gallons, but we've listed it here. For Rehoboth, 3.4 million gallons per day. Lewes BPW, 1.5 MGD. Wolf Neck, 3.1, but that's an annual average. And then, as Mr. Panetta said before, if we do move forward, our combined Lewes Sussex annual average inflows start at 2.7 MGD with a future inflow listed here. 2030 would be 3.4. As best we can predict, 2040 would be 4 million gallons, and then by 2050, 5 million gallons.
So the Lewes permit, and Austin, you correct me, we do not have a flow-based permit. Our permits are nutrient-based. So, as was explained earlier, this 1.5 MGD for the Lewes is based on a conversion, best guess, of what nutrient loading would mean and the performance of the plant to flow. But we have zero flow in the permit. or zero flow mentioned in the permit. And the other thing, this may be an ideal time to bring up, we're hearing a lot of, and we got this feedback when we were running workshops of our own in Lewes, and we're hearing it now in these workshops about Rehoboth Beach going.
Is that our lock mechanism? I'm sorry, well, there's some extraneous noise there. Just
Okay.
talk up, Tom. Go ahead.
All right. There's been a lot of background talk about by entering into this agreement, you're facilitating growth in the county. And the people in Lewes have heard me say this many times, and I think I mentioned it at the last meeting. The Lewes BPW, the county engineer, and your Board of Public Works do not make land use decisions. That is planning commissions and the commissioners, city council, county council. And once those bodies have permitted a development, we are responsible for treating the flow or providing the water in our case and providing the electricity. So using a very inappropriate term, people who think we can constipate growth by not doing this, that's not the way the process works. And if there's concerns of growth, I think that many people have, they should be going to the respective planning commissions and the prospective councils and commissioners meetings. So.
Thank you. Okay. Next slide, any redesign for our current outfall, consideration of wear and tear attributable to additional flow at the plant. Note, we inserted asterisks after the term plant, continuing force main outfall and infrastructure. What we're proposing in our agreement is that Sussex County will assume 100% of all required ocean testing, modeling, any outfall modification expenses, and any future operations and maintenance. There's really two high-level reasons for that. One, we hope that you see that as a nice offer for your consideration, but also it will come at a cost savings to our ratepayers because we also own and operate an outfall in South Bethany. So when we need to go out and do testing or repairs, which we by permit have to do at both outfalls, we and Rehoboth, if we're doing it for both outfalls, we're going to incur some reduction in costs. For instance, just in the ability for the company to come in and mobilize to these outfalls, we would receive some reduction in cost. So we believe that if one entity is doing it, it makes better sense. Furthermore, the county will participate in our force main maintenance and repair based on the percentage of utilization. In other words, how much percentage that we are responsible for running through that force main. And I'll illustrate that in a slide, which probably makes it a little easier to understand. And then the asterisks, it asked consideration for wear and tear at the plant. As you know, we're asking for a tie-in point beyond the Rehoboth plant. So this project and this agreement will not affect any flow at the Rehoboth plant and certainly will not result in any additional flow to the Rehoboth plant. This is a consideration for clean water being tied into the outfall and then disposed of.
I think probably the only thing is if Hans wants to talk about the wear and tear on the outfall from the additional flow.
The outfall, both outfalls, the Rehoboth and the South Coastal outfall, are designed with fixed diffuser, so there are no moving parts. So these are, mostly the wear and tear is on the growth, which there is biological growth, which we have to have removed in the past through our companies when they come in. They blast some of the muscles and the growth which want to clog up the diffusers. But there's no chemical or abrasive wear and tear on the diffusers. It is really a biological issue. So we have, as Todd pointed out earlier, we have structured the agreements for this work in the past. There is standby costs and mobilization costs associated. We believe this maintenance, including that wear and tear, let's call it, it's not wear and tear, it's, let's say, built up, can be removed in a more cost-effective manner if we do it together, because it's the same equipment, same barges, same team members. So from that standpoint, and when it comes to the additional outfall diffusers, you currently are not fully equipped for all diffuser ports. Some of them are plugged still. They have to be modified, they have to be enlarged, they have to be equipped with the right equipment, and for it to reach the full capacity. We, as in the South Coastal Outfall, just in the last step, 30-some years later, removed the last blind flanges and installed the last diffuser on the ports at the South Coastal Outfall. So you see how long that takes to get that done, and that was probably the last 10% of the ones which were installed in that last round a year and a half ago.
You stand here. Let's jump right to the illustration and that explain.
When you look at the outfall, and that is from the Deauville Beach ocean side, so that would be a full Sussex County responsibility, and that would be a responsibility which is borne by all of our ratepayers, just like all of our other force mains. That's a system-wide maintenance expense. If you look at the responsibility between the tie-in point and Deauville Beach, that would be a responsibility based on flow-based, and that flow would be the flow-based arrangement would be covered under the purchase agreement, and that is different flows than coming out of the plant, because at the plant we already have a flow-based responsibility that's based on the influent flows to the facility. So there's 3 different maintenance. So if we have a break on Henlopen Avenue, the repair responsibilities would be different than if it happens down on State Street, for example. So here are your different ones. If there's an issue with the outfall, Sussex County would cover it entirely. If there's an issue on Henlopen Avenue, there's a percentage arrangement. And if there's one south of the tie-in point, such as on State Street, right at your pump stations, force mains, that would be different, again, based on the influent to the wastewater treatment plant.
Responsibility that is different from ownership?
Yes.
So the outfall ownership would still be maintained by City of Rehoboth Beach?
100%.
Thank you.
From this photo here where you proposed the tie-in point, I guess, can you confirm that would not, it would avoid any disruptions in the City of Rehoboth Beach or property owners? Am I understanding that correct?
The Rehoboth Beach operation will not be impacted. We have technologies today which allow you to make that tie-in I can think of 3 different methods which guarantee continuous flow from the treatment plant. So the design team will make the final determination on which one of the methods is the most appropriate.
Have you done this before?
I have done this way too many times in my career, some under emergency conditions. So this one is a relatively easy task to accomplish from a technological standpoint. Now, any any construction project, and Mr. Williams and myself were deeply involved in the force main construction and the outfall construction. If you lay pipe in a fully urbanized environment, there will be disruptions to the traveling public. There will be disruptions. Unfortunately, it happens that you have, that service lines are cut, that, like some construction mishaps happened, and but they do not result in like an overall disruption of service. It's not any different than Comcast missling through one of your your service lines and one of your water mains. It happens to us in Dewey Beach, and it can happen. It can happen. I'm not saying it will, but it can. The disruption to the traveling public will happen. There's just no way about it, and there's no two ways about that. This tie-in point we're showing here, because this can be accomplished by all public right-of-ways. It may not be the best one, but it is the one which does not require any easements. So we wanted to make sure we show a tie-in point which uses public right-of-way to get from point A to point B.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Pineda wants me to speak to the timing, the actual tying into the 24-inch effluent main, depending on the method selected, is measured in hours. If you go to a straightforward tapping T and valve, or if you go through a complex bypass arrangement with a flow-through line stop equipment, and when we choose to use a different fitting, this can be measured in a week. So, but that's sort of the timeline between 1 day to like 5 days maximum, depending on the method you choose. So that's, I wanted to give you that idea.
Does that help?
Yeah, I guess I just want to confirm, where you're currently proposing to physically tie in, it is outside of the city limits. You would not be digging up or any of our streets to make the connection. Is that a fair understanding?
As it is proposed today, that would be correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think
That's right. It's,
Roosevelt Street at the base of the bridge, that's city limits?
I think it's outside the city limit. Not,
It's outside the city.
no, we're proposing the tying by State Street pump station. Is that in the city limit?
So we're at the point of Roosevelt at the base of the Route 1 bridge. Anyone know if that's in or out of the city limits? But we can confirm maybe at a later date. But that's what that is illustrating there, tie-in point. That's that area of location.
Understood, thank you.
Any other questions about? Yes, please.
Clarify, you're talking, I know this is not part of the discussion now, but the pipe from Lewes to Wolf Neck and Wolf Neck to the tie-in point, you said that's all on public right-of-way currently?
So
It would be all on public right-of-way with the exception of one easement we need from the Parks and Rec to get from Lewes, from the Wolf Neck plant to Glade Road. And we've discussed that with the Parks and Rec division in the past because we were also looking at making this a different route when we looked at different options. We do have easements in place. Once we get to the Glade Road, we can go on into Hebron Road right away, but we also have an easement parallel with Hebron Road right away currently, which has enough room to put that force main in there if we choose to do so. But so the easement, just like we need a permit from DNRC to construct that pipe, we would need an easement to lay the pipe.
And Commissioner, at our July meeting, we did show an illustration, it's not in this slide deck, of just a proposed direction of how we would make that tie-in. It's basically, as Hans said, near the current bike path to get down to Glade Road and then zigzag its way to the tie-in point. All to be determined at a later date with clear design work. Okay, I think we're wrapping up. This is a question about other municipalities related to Sussex County and who we serve. We would absolutely provide you an agreement, a copy of our agreement with the town of Selbyville. As you know, we mentioned before, we do service several towns in the county, one of them being the town of Selbyville, which sends its entire flow to our treatment plant at South Bethany and then is treated there and then disposed of through the ocean outfall down at South Bethany. Okay, there's a question about the determination of GHD's role in this project. whether there's a conflict of interest as they would represent all players. It is true, GHD is the consultant for all three entities at this point, Rehoboth, Sussex, and Lewes BPW. From our side of the equation, speaking for Lewes and Sussex, we have no concerns with GHD's involvement. But if the city does want to hire another consultant related to the overview of our proposal, that's the city's choice and decision. But as we've said before, time is of the essence, so we would hope that if that is to be considered, that the timing of that proposal would also be considered, because we are asking for some direction or indication from the city by the end of this year.
Yeah, and just to reinforce that, on the BPW, we have, Presley and myself, both engineers, the staff, and we have no concerns with GHD working for both the county and us and designing the tie-ins. So, as Todd said.
So, Taylor, would you reiterate what the city's position is on hiring our own engineer?
Actually, I think Henry's prepared to go into a little more on that if he'd like to come up.
So after the July workshop, I've contacted several engineering firms that have significant wastewater outfall experience, and one is Hazen and Sawyer. I met with them at the Tricon conference last week, or the week prior, excuse me, and just on Friday, I gave them the notice to proceed for a risk study. They'll analyze the effluent pump station, identify existing and future hydraulic capacity issues, and considerations when connecting the two systems together, and the potential nutrient or water quality impacts associated with the outfalls permit, with our permit. And they are aware of the time, the urgency of it, and they will get the turnaround to this quickly. And the cost of this is just under $26,000.
And so if our next meeting is the October workshop, would they be ready to make the presentation by then?
It'd probably be close, and obviously, Mayor, don't want to rush them. So if they say they need more time, if they need to November, I think we should obviously give that to them, but say it needs to be by November if they're not ready for October.
Well, I'll need to know that because we may want to adjust our next meeting date, right? Thank you.
All right, Mayor, Commissioners, that concludes the list of questions that we received ahead of time and we prepared in this presentation, but we are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do you want to do a question? Does Henry have anything additional?
Oh, that's it.
Okay. Any questions up by the commissioners?
I had just one. I just wanted to clarify, when we haven't up to this point really thrown any numbers out yet, but just in this particular instance where our head of Public Works made mention of a study of approximately $26,000, that anything associated with this discussion, I would say, I just want to verify, is borne on the wastewater fund, right? This is not going to be a general fund expenses that would basically is handled by ratepayers, both ours and the other ratepayers that receive our service. I just want to make sure, this doesn't get described as the city paying, that taxpayers are paying this.
Right, this is
okay,
not
all
a
right.
general fund expense.
Right, okay, that's just want to make sure about that.
Yeah, Commissioner, it'll be coming out of the engineering portion of of the wastewater budget for this year.
Right, okay, thank you.
I don't know if this could be answered at this point, but would a new ocean outfall permit be required from DENREC for these changes?
Commissioner, the city has an NPDS permit.
Correct.
So it's not like an ocean outfall permit, it's an operations permit with an designated outfall in the permit. When you read the permit, it says ocean outfall and it gives it a number. So the county would get the Wolf Neck permit would read the same. It would be an NPDS permit with all the pound limitations and a designation with the same ocean outfall number as you have in yours.
And that's the permit. We're still waiting on renewal?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And that's a 5-year permit, is that, or? Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else up here? If not, we'll go to the members of the public. As I intimated at the beginning, we'll double the amount of time available to 6 minutes and up to 2 times to approach. This is a very important topic, and there's limited time frame. And is there anybody who would like to speak on this or ask any questions? Sam, come ahead. Anybody that comes up, we need to state your name and relationship to the city.
Sam Cooper. I live at 13 Newcastle Street in the city. And unfortunately, I didn't bring anything to take notes, so I'm just kind of have to pull that from my head. I think you need a little more clarification of why the city's dealing with the county and Lewes. Who's going to own the treatment plant?
Sussex County.
Who is going to hold the NPDS permit?
Us by ourselves, Sussex County.
Why is the city dealing with Lewes? I I understand it's fine for them to be in these discussions, but it sounds like it's going to be a 3-way agreement, and I don't get that. When you're owning the plant, you're doing the discharge.
So the question is, why is Rehoboth dealing with Lewes?
Yes. Why are they part of the contract, or would be part of the, contract for the use of the outfall?
Well, you want to speak to your boards?
Well, when we came before the Rehoboth Beach in July, it was requested that Lewes be part of a tripatriot agreement for the outfall. We would be perfectly happy if Rehoboth Beach preferred a bi-party agreement for the outfall.
Okay, that's
but-
fine, because I don't see the reason if you're the one responsible, why there would be a third party involved. Another question that came to my mind, is the county willing, or are they intending to describe the area that would contribute wastewater to this plant and ultimately to the outfall?
Yeah, we can certainly do that. We know that right now.
Okay, because I guess regarding Mr. Panetta's comments, you're going from 2.7, I believe, currently to a potential of 5 million gallons a day in 25, 26 years. That's a huge increase in flow.
That 2.5 to 5 million includes the Lewes flow, and
I thought the
then-
2.7 was Lewes flow included as well, current flow.
The total today is 2.7.
Yeah, so you're proposing an increase of 2.3 million gallons per day. In my experience, a 40-some% increase in flow is huge. I mean, the Rehoboth probably sees no increase in flow, even we tear down and we build. I just I question where those numbers are coming from. I think you owe, I mean, I understand you're saying that, you know, the county's got to treat it if the county council approves it. But I think you owe the people of Rehoboth and the district where those numbers come from. Where you expect that growth to come from. Another question I have is, Hans, you're going to be using a lagoon for storage so you can equalize the flow? And will you have some sort of, there'll be some filters before between the lagoon and the pump station
When you go with the, so let me just start with what we believe the design would look like today. So it would be a full B&R facility, which would obviously have tertiary filtration, and depending on the permit conditions, like Commissioner Gossett said, may include different filtration techniques than what we have currently at South Coastal. But after that, there would be a storage lagoon, and it is partially covered or mostly covered with floating solar cells, and the rest is covered with a cover in order to prevent any algae. And there would be a rechlorination before we pump it out.
Would there be filters?
Yes, but not on the effluent of the lagoon.
I think you should require that. From my perspective, having been involved in this for years, near the end, we have new filters now. But it was always comforting to me when somebody, that there was no way that could happen when the filters were working, and hopefully I mean, it was only near the end that they didn't, maybe. But between the lagoon, there ought to be, if it's a window screen to me, just to filter out anything that's...
I mean, like, remember the main enemy of lagoons is algae.
Yeah.
So if you have no light, you have no algae. So, but I have certainly dealt with a lot of filters on lagoons, which did nothing but screening out algae. And they're not filters, they're really like, as you'd call them, more
I don't
screens.
really care about the algae. If somebody sees something float in the ocean, I don't want to say it came from that outfall. Because I want to be able to say, it went through a filter that's this size, what you saw couldn't have.
There's no problem to put a screen on with micron openings, which would eliminate that question. Because nothing you can see with your eye would make it through a 6-micron screen, and you know that.
All I'm saying is some sort of a screen. A condom will go through a pump and come out the other end, and
that is not.
We'll be floating on the water.
As long as we don't call it a filter.
Well,
a screening device.
Whatever.
A screening device.
It's a filter. Yes. You're filtering.
Screening device is certainly that's not an issue. So when you look at the flows, let me go back to the more complex question. As you all know, we have a major land treatment system at inland bays, which by 2050 will see limitations to the land treatment process. The county has the capability to move flows between Wolf Neck and inland bays. So if we experienced land treatment limitations, we would have to move some flow from inland bays to the ocean outfall. And we will have to do this in order to, and chloride.
You own thousands of acres out there?
Yes. But you cannot do anything about chlorides. As soon as we have sea level rise and chloride impacts, land treatment systems are going to be challenged, especially during storm events.
Okay.
I mean, that is going to be a scientific reality, and we will have to prepare for it.
I'm kind of basking in this, because we went through this, and I took a lot of flack over quite a few years. So.
And I was right there, and I know it.
Okay.
So you know that I'm thinking about 2050.
One of the questions that I think there was in my view, maybe I didn't pay close attention, there was a little bit of ambiguity about the timing of this. Talk like you were extending the use of the outfall to the existing contract, but then I think Mr. Panetta said something about it would basically they want some guarantee in perpetuity. I think it ought to be longer than the 2054 horizon or whatever. So you know, I think you need to clear that up.
Yeah, I mean, like right now, the current agreement, as you well know, has the 25-year term, then the 25-year automatic renewal, and then it has the other ones are probably based on new conditions. But, you know, like that's how our current agreement is structured. But once we're connected, as the chairman said, you cannot disconnect the facilities. So we both know that it's in perpetuity.
And I believe that between Alex and our solicitor and the county solicitor, the words can be put in place there to give the necessary assurance.
I'm not saying that he can't. I'm just saying it seemed to be hung out there that this contract would just go to 2054 and then it would be renegotiated or something. Just, I'm not.
Right, so. The only other thing I would like to add to what Hans said is that both Lewes and the county have a big push to get residents off of septic systems for environmental reasons. And that's a portion of the increase to
That's
the
minor.
facilities.
That's tiny in the area we're talking about.
Now, you and I rarely disagree. On this one, I disagree with you, and I'm going to sit down with you and show you how many septic systems we have remediated in the last 5 years alone. So,
Where were they located?
how about
Maxborough and
how about 900?
Ellendale
How about
and places like that?
900 right now in the Herring Creek?
How many?
900 in Herring Creek right now.
Drop in the bucket.
600 in Chapel Branch. I mean, like, as I said, Sam, that's not for discussion today, but I'd like to show it to you. So we have a better understanding. Plus,
Don't they go to inland bays?
Pardon?
Do they go to inland bays?
They go to the inland bays, yes.
Okay.
So they're in the inland bays watershed. But the number, I just want to make sure, you mentioned a different date, and the first slide says, the current agreement ends in 2067.
If you extend it.
2067, yes.
Okay. I wasn't arguing the point. I was just saying,
I mean,
think
but that's
it was ambiguous and needed to be.
That's where the term ends. It doesn't mean it ends, obviously.
Okay. One of the things that my view was that I think you need to make sure that this county's not going to divert flow from the Rehoboth plant so that the costs go up there if they pull their flow out. And I'm not saying they're planning on it, but just keep that in mind. And finally, I think, I might have some more questions later, but the $20 million figure, I think soon, very soon, you need to put some meat behind that as to how you arrived at that. I just think, you know, it sounds like a good number to me, but I think everybody needs to know where that's coming from.
So any number that we come up with has meat behind it. So
Has what?
meat behind it. I just want to be sure. We're not just throwing out
Well,
numbers.
show it to us.
So I'll explain it. So when we came before you a few years ago, we used 3.8 million gallons per day for every $1 million. We're going to give 3.8. We were asking for 2 at that time, which was $7.6 million. That number was based off of the capacity, the flow capacity of 10.1. So that value was a high value for that pipe. We've decided to still offer that high number, times it by 5, which gives you 19 million. In talking with staff, we looked at all of our options, and our options are the most we can give is 20 million. We're going to throw the biggest number out there we can so that we don't go back and forth.
I don't know.
So
Where
there
did
you go.
3.8 million come from?
38.5 divided by the 10.1.
So you're using the cost to build the
Correct.
the outfall, not
Correct.
the present day worth of it.
No, but if you even take that, you still get to the 19 million.
So if you
I don't
take,
know. You showed me those figures. That's
I
all
can
I'm
give
asking.
you, I can give
know,
you
you're-
any number, I can give
I'm
you
not
any
willing
number
to
you
take
want.
your word for it. I want you to show it to me on paper. Thank
Trust
you.
me, just
Thank you.
send me any number, any questions, I can get you the backup to any of these numbers.
Well, I would say to Sam and anybody else, if you do have questions beyond today, then to send them to myself or Taylor or Evan, and we can pose them to the group for response at our next meeting, whenever that is.
Well, I think that's a question right there. We would like to see the specifics, backup of that equation that you reached, how you reached it, based on the figures of either the building of it or today's cost.
Happy to give it to you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to suggest, Patrick, that they go back and re-listen to this tape, and any of our questions or constituent questions, that let's address them more fully in writing next time. Anybody else? France or Carolyn, and then Jay.
Carolyn Diefenderfer, city resident. When all's said and done, I'd like to understand the area that's covered, the physical area, so that we can understand if the growth that's being projected makes sense, especially our current growth under what Rehoboth currently services. Because we service more than just with what's within the city limits. I mean, we can all look and say, okay, there's an open lot here if a house gets on it, or, that kind of thing. But I think we all need to understand the total physical area that's covered by this so that we can understand the potential for the growth and whether the numbers make sense, and what's the total capacity of the outfall that we need to cover what we're already servicing versus what they're asking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Jay?
I'm Jay LeGree. I live at 7 Prospect Street. I am really discouraged about the county's refusal to adopt new technology. There is technology available that would get rid of the lagoons, would put nutrients off the board, and would handle the contaminants of concern, emerging concern that the EPA is talking about, and they're in their news releases and in their bulletins. I'm really discouraged that they're continuing to use 100-year-old technology, the same as we use, and our plant is 40 years old, and we're going to have to upgrade in the near future because we can't take out pharmaceuticals, we can't take out forever compounds, we can't remove a lot of personal care products, we can't remove prions, which are the offshoots of virus that live in the wastewater. And if you read the EPA bulletins and their news releases, they're talking about that. There's a huge study that was done by the state of Washington where they compare all of these contaminants, they're called them, against the types of wastewater treatment that's going on today. And oxidation ditch treatment like we do here at Rehoboth, and like I think they're talking about at Wolf Neck with lagoons and spray irrigation, is at the bottom of the list. And if they would upgrade, and the upgrade's cheap, you can upgrade, it's cheaper to operate, for the supplies, and for some reason they don't worry about a small footprint, but they're small footprints, and we're gonna have to think about that when we adopt ours. And we should be thinking about the new technology, and I'm really discouraged that we're using 100-year-old technology, and the mayor comes and talks about algae and the cotton picking outfall. And we wouldn't need to do that. We could get rid of all of that just by adopting some new technology that the mitigation committee talked about and recommended. It's not new. I just watched the mitigation committee deliberate, and you can read their report. $20 million now. If they pay 80% of our mortgage just on the outfall, we're looking at like 32 million. 20 million is fine, but I'd just like to see them continue on like we do with Lewes, or like we do with Dewey Beach and Henlopen Acres and North Shores, like we've been doing for since the 80s. That's worked great. Mr. Panetta talked about flow, and that indeed is true. There's no flow in our TMDLs in our permit. It's just pounds of BOD and suspended solids, and ours happens to talk about how many colonies of Enterococcus. It's not a flow thing. And the offer to take responsibility for our outfall is dead on arrival. There's not one citizen in Rehoboth that would agree to Sussex County taking over our outfall and our last mile of force main. Responsibility, whatever you call it, pay, we need to control that. And we couldn't get one vote from Sussex County to do that. I don't even think we could get anybody to agree to have them come to our outfall. And I think that's a great idea if we'd clean it up with nutrients and contaminants and have a pristine, clean flow. We're gonna have to talk everybody into that before we can get it, because I've talked to maybe 20, 30 people in the last week and a half. I knew this was coming. Nobody wants to do it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I'd just like to comment, relative to the level of quality of the effluent, my expectation would be there would be something in there that at some point into the future, that if we increase the machinery or whatever and increase the level of quality of effluent, that the county and BPW would have to commensurately keep up with us, if you will. So is there anybody else?
That's gonna happen within a few years, I promise you. We're gonna have to do that.
Suzanne?
Mayor.
Oh, yeah, let Hans respond before you go, Suzanne.
Mr.
You can
LaGrange.
stand up. You can stand up.
Mr. LaGrange's comment about the technology, I think, needs to stand to be adjusted. You know, like our technology is the same technology we're using at the South Coastal plant. We're just finishing the treatment construction right now. It is much more advanced than oxidation ditches. When BNR came around, oxidation ditches were about, the state of the art 40 years ago. We have better we have better oxygen transfer in our facilities. We have better control of the anaerobic zones and the anoxic zones. So I strongly disagree with your comment, and I will not let you just say that and we walk away from it.
Then I would like to have the opportunity to respond. If you're talking about biological nutrient removal, which is what BNR stands for in most places, I would refer you to the study that was recently done by the state of Washington in 2021. They say BNR is expensive, it is difficult, and they have it down low for removal. And I'm not sure, I haven't looked again, but I'm not sure BNR can remove pharmaceuticals or forever compounds, which are the poly and perfluoroalkyls.
I'm quite familiar with them, but I was responding to your comment about age of technology as well as nutrient removal capabilities. When you talk about PFAS and or chemicals associated with personal care products, et cetera, we're familiar with that. But Commissioner Gossett earlier asked that. As these limits are developed, we all have to live with them. We might have an advantage by designing a facility while these limits are being developed and being published. So we could design for it while you would have to upgrade for it. So, we might be in a more, let's say, cost-effective environment, then you will find yourself on that side. And it really depends on how you look at this,
Thank you. Thank you, Jay.
I think I hear him saying that they're going to send flow that's with no nutrients or contaminants.
I guess, no, there will be a limit. There is a concentration in any flow unless you distill the water. That takes everything out. That's just H2O.
Suzanne?
Good, resident on Grove Street. I had a quick question before I had my remarks. You were talking about the pipe from Wolf Neck to eventually join our outfall, that it would zigzag along Hebron Road. The map we were shown in June seemed to show that it would probably have to be pulled through Henlope and Acres. Is that a change since the June map, or did I misunderstand the route that was shown in June?
I've not seen any design that impacts Henlope and Acres, and I probably shouldn't have used the term zigzag, but it comes down Hebron and eventually will go south towards Route 1 and then under the canal at the bridge, and then tie-in point at the bridge, which is the Route 1 bridge, and there's a pump station there at the point of Roosevelt Street or Roosevelt Avenue.
Okay, so the effluent from Wolf Neck will join up with the treated effluent from the Rehoboth Beach wastewater plant at that near that State Road pump station?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. No problem. That was just a quick question, and I guess at least I'm now learning that this Hazen and Sawyer group, whom Henry has selected, I guess, has the work already begun on by that consultant or not yet?
Henry's going to address that. I believe they're starting right away, but.
Yeah. Last week or the week before, when they, after that conference, one of the engineers came up here and I showed him our effluent pump station and gave him a tour of where potential tie-in points, as well as the air release valve by Deauville Beach. So we just gave them, literally on Friday, the authorization to proceed.
Okay, I think it's good the public knows, because for me, it's a little premature for the city to have authorized spending. I do understand that since it comes from the wastewater fund, which is shared proportionally by Dewey Beach and various other areas outside city limits, that mitigates it a little bit. I think in general, I'm hearing that, the rationale for the 20 million. I've always viewed the money, if we were to consider this, which I am actually deeply against, has to reflect their next best alternative, which normally is building this outfall 1.13 miles north of ours, which I'm just eyeballing maybe 60, 70 million in today's dollars to build another outfall. So I'm concerned that the amount of money, given the risks to our beaches, and I feel like we are a resort community and our economy is almost completely dependent on the quality of our swimming beaches. That's just a fact. And I am concerned that, yes, as former Mayor Cooper pointed out, the fact that going from 2.7 million gallons per day to 5 million gallons per day, I actually am completely confident that will be the probable flows within another couple decades. If you just look at the building near Cape Henlopen High School, the building just to the west of the Walmart, which flows to Wolf Neck, we've just added, I don't even know how many new housing starts. I mean, it's hard to keep track of them because virtually every Tuesday and Friday when the Cape Gazette publishes, there's notice of something that's been approved. So in general, I think there are just factors beyond Rehoboth's control, like the development in the county, which make this partnership very scary to me. I mean, I think also if there were to be a problem, Rehoboth's peak flow in the summer season, we don't have nearly the storage tank capacity in the event of a problem at the tie-in. I don't see that it would limit our options in our valuable peak summer season as to what to do if there were a problem with any of these pumps. I'm also just in general having learned about the 2022 inspection that was done, although I know the loose bolts were, I believe, replaced in this most recent inspection in 2024. It's hard for all of us to know what the additional wear and tear, if you take the pumps and diffusers from about 4 million gallons per day now, or in July, up to potentially 9 to 10 million gallons per day, you're immediately and the cost sharing on that, I mean, it's good that the county's now offering to cover the maintenance, I guess, but that maintenance cost, I know you see some cost savings since you can share with the teams and the crews from South Coastal, which are inspecting their outfall, but I'm not as convinced the cost savings will be that significant. I mean, the two outfalls are what, about 10 miles apart at least? I think in general, just reading about this, I'm concerned that while you say you have, it's the elected officials in Georgetown or the Planning Commission in Georgetown, which has the final say, if you end up with this solution through the Rehoboth Beach outfall, which does have some excess capacity, it will just continue to encourage Sussex County and what it's doing, instead of forcing the ratepayers in the Wolf Neck service area and in the town of Lewes to pay higher rates. If they have to pay higher rates for wastewater treatment because you're about to build another outfall, that's actually a good thing. It will reduce the number of builders and home buyers who decide it makes sense, because this area will become less affordable than it is now. So I see a lot of reasons why I'd be very cautious about this. So, and I really think I've always been disappointed that DENREC announced another outfall is not optimal, because if you do have two separate outfalls, each handling a little, probably under 5 million gallons per day, that's half as much risk if either one of them fails. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Suzanne. Anybody else? Francis?
Mayor, can we respond?
Yeah.
I'm not going to answer everything, but Suzanne, thank you very much, and it's good to put a face with a name now. The July meeting, I would suggest everyone go back and listen to Christopher Toulouse from the Center from Inland Bay's discussion on the beaches. And he unfortunately could not be here today, otherwise he would have been. But if you remember, what he said then was, or what we said was, 4 of the 5 warnings for Rehoboth Beach were pre-ocean outfall. And the 5th one was related to a very heavy rainfall, and it was land runoff. And the study showed that it was not human waste, it was surface waste, chicken manure, fertilizers, so on. So I am very, very comfortable with the ocean outfall. And the second one is that 2 ocean outfalls 1.3 miles apart are going to affect the same beach. So that's the only thing I wanted to say on that.
I'd like to add that, and I recognize, Ms. Good, in a week you'll be in a different seat, and we probably won't be able to change your mind either way. But we've operated an outfall in South Bethany for over 40 years, and we've not had one beach closure ever. We treat water from Fenwick, South Bethany, up to Rehoboth, into Lewes. We have the entire coast, the county does, in one way or another. And we've never had a beach closure because of our treatment processes. And we've never had a beach closure as a result of sewer. Never as a result of sewer. Never. Never. And I'd also like to say, we're proposing this to the commission because we believe that this is the best decision rooted in science and finance. If you choose to go in a different direction, that's fine. We're going to have to choose Plan B. We don't want to. We'd rather continue our partnership with Rehoboth. But one way or the other, we're going to have to make a decision and make it at some point. And with our partnerships throughout the county, really, because we have other municipal partnerships on the western side, we believe we have illustrated a history of due diligence and responsibility, and we can continue to do that. But we came here, in the first proposal was to help Lewes, and we're already partners with Lewes, we're already partners with Rehoboth, so we're coming here to engage you all, and that's our proposal now. So we're hoping that with that you'll consider it.
Todd, what is the flow rate currently at South Coastal flow rate currently in Rehoboth and flow rate if the three-way deal goes through?
And like sometimes you have to say,
There we go. There we go.
I will get back to you, Mayor, because I look at the, I look at the peak flow rates for the summertime at South Coast. I do not look at the annual averages. And I think I need to not shoot from the hip on that one.
Yeah,
And,
okay.
and Henry, probably if you know the numbers off the top of your head, if not, we can both give you both numbers and come back to you.
Next time,
You know,
next
that
time.
gives you the peak months, and the annual average is probably a good comparison.
Those two numbers would be good. Thank you. Francis?
Just one more thing, and then, and I think the estimate of $70 million for a new outfall is way overstated. So,
I have three.
Name and
Oh.
relationship to the city?
Hi, Frances Kelleher, resident of the city. I have three requests of the city as part of due diligence. So one was the engineering. If we're going to incur additional, are we going to incur additional costs because the pump station needs to be upgraded, the force main needs to be whatever, pushed out, or more force needed to get this increased capacity out to sea. So that's the engineering part, the physical part, but I'm going to echo sort of, or maybe paraphrase former Commissioner Legree's points is, I would like the city to do a deep due diligence assessment or analysis of all of the biological, if you will, requirements for the quality of the effluent, and not just now, but also to take into account what is really coming soon. If this agreement is going into forever mode, I think there really does need to be, and especially if there are contaminants, I'll just call them generally speaking, biological contaminants or chemical contaminants, biochemical contaminants, prions, whatever they are, that are not just a matter of a concentration in the effluent, but that calculations on total pounds of something or other are limited. How is this increased volume of effluent, are we still going to stay within what those total amounts are? So I think there needs to be really a deep look into the biological, or meeting regulations for contaminants. And the other thing I would like the city to present and show us residents is, what is the real total cost of the ocean outfall going to be by, I believe the number is 2043, when we pay off our final payment. So I would like to know how much money will the city have spent on our outfall by the time we pay off all the interests, rates, and that number takes into account all the consulting fees, all the money that has gone into not just the physical building of it, but every bit of money that it cost us to build that, and what is that number? And I had similar questions to Mayor Cooper about what was slide 10 on the 9924, slide 10, because I tabled those numbers up about the projected effluent in 2030, 40, and 50,
And those percentages, they go up 26% in the first 6 years, which was from 24 to 30. Well, I guess they're not even going to go online with us until around 2030, where they're already having a 26% increase from 2.7 MGDs up to the 3.4. From 2030 to 2040, they increase it 17%, and then from 2040 to 2050, they've got another 25% increase. And it's sort of, where do those numbers come? They're not even sort of semi-consistent. What do they know that we don't know? And the fact is that in 2050, that won't even be, if this agreement kicks off or it goes into effect as of around 2030 timeframe, 25 years from then is 2055, and into perpetuity, into foreverness, another 25 years goes way out, and they're already up at 5 before they even hit the 25-year mark. So I guess, does that mean they're just simply going to limit and not add any more to it? But I think we need a basis for all these different numbers. And I also had the question of, what is the basis for the magic number of 20? But before I even care about that, I want to see what has the city put into building the outfall? What is the value of that?
Thank you, Francis. Anybody else? Craig?
Craig Thier, 102 Laurel Street. My question is for either the mayor or the city manager or both. Lots of great questions here. I think I want to understand, what is the process going to be going forward to gather these questions? I've written down a lot, and then try to answer these questions. As we hear, there's a very tight time frame here. They're looking for an answer by the end of the year. Thank you.
Right. So any questions that you or anyone has can be directed to me. We kind of serve as the conduit between the county staff, and we can get those questions answered. And you did mention it is a very tight time frame. They need to make a decision by the end of the year, so that's why we've tried to be proactive and move forward with our due diligence on the capacity and other items. So that's kind of the process. We will be coming back to present several times before the full Board of Commissioners will be asked to make a decision ultimately. So we'll have as much information as possible.
So I guess to put you a little bit on the spot here, right? So lots of questions. Some of these questions I feel are more complex, and there's probably some thought, some information that's going to, data, whatever is going to need to be gathered. So when would we expect? I mean, is it first the next workshop meeting that will get the feedback on these questions? Do you anticipate it before that?
Well, my notes show that, based on our conversation today, the next meeting is to be determined. Originally, we said October workshop meeting. However, I think it's better that we plan it based upon when our new Rehoboth subcontracted engineer is available and ready to come back to us. You know, Henry mentioned November, and I would ask them to try to speed it up a little bit, and if we have to have a special meeting, so be it. But I would say at the latest, the November workshop meeting. And there is, I think, a lot of information that we want to have ready for that meeting. By example, all the questions asked here today, we would like the Sussex County and the BPW to take another look at them. I'd like the city to start looking at some of the answers to see what input we want to have. So unfortunately, I can't say exactly when. Yeah.
And from our perspective, we will do as requested and attempt to capture all the questions asked, and certainly take any questions sent to us or sent to the city and put a comprehensive response together. And may I throw out, if I may, Mayor, we could even have a discussion on that response in the October meeting as the capacity study is being analyzed and worked on separately. So, because these questions are going to create more questions and more response and more dialogue, and maybe October, we could continue that dialogue.
Well, and I have to admit that, you know, I understand your desire to have an answer, say, by December 31st, but I can only push this so fast, and I would hope that as long as there's momentum going, that, you know, if we went beyond that, that you would be understanding. But I do know what the goal is. Craig?
Yeah, I like, and I'm sorry, your first name is?
Todd.
Todd, I apologize.
No worries.
for that. So, Todd, I do like what you're proposing, right? And again, I don't set the agenda here, but I think the sooner we could get information, the better. I'm probably reluctant to just have you post the answers to the question because, you know, when you respond to questions, it just generates more questions. So being available for people to, you know, for you to present those and people to ask more questions. So I appreciate your willingness to do that. So
Yeah, that's something we'll definitely
Just two
consider.
questions, two
Yeah.
things. As I said earlier, you know, we're looking for a go-ahead, a go-ahead by the end of the year. Once again, if there's still work that needs to be done on legal arrangements, that's fine. But we need to know if we're going to proceed or we need to start pursuing other courses in more depth. So, you know, the 23rd is not that all three parties have to sign the agreement. And the second one, oh no, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I can only speak for myself, right? You know, I would love to move this along as quickly as possible and get you an answer by the end of the year. But, you know, we also know how things work, which is once we hit Thanksgiving, things tend to grind to a halt. So we're not talking 4 months at this point. We're talking really, you know, something less than 3 months to get
Well,
you
yeah,
a decision.
between
So, and I'm
Thanksgiving-
just being practical from that perspective.
We understand completely. The other thing is that we will go back and listen to the tape, as you know, Todd said, but a lot of the questions are ambiguous or can be misinterpreted. So anything that anyone can submit to the mayor and that we could have then in writing would be very helpful to us, making sure we're answering the right question and not going off track.
Thank you. And I'm not sure you recognize this gentleman. He is Craig Thier, our, one of our next commissioners.
Certainly.
Very good. Thank you, Craig.
Yeah. I guess on that point, should they direct questions to you or to the city manager or both? If they're sending in additional questions?
I'm happy to take the questions, but either way, we'll definitely get them addressed, whoever they're sent to.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I could put a period at the end, we would probably want those questions, I don't know, you guys pick the time frame, but we need an end date so we can get our work done and then get it back to you. And if we're targeting the October time frame, then, you know, it's going to take us some time to have that back and forth, so whatever the deadline is that you'd like.
Mayor, please allow me to go back to the capacity question for just 2 or 3 minutes.
Oh, go ahead.
So in the world of engineering, you know, capacity when it comes to permitting doesn't exist. The way the permit reads, it says it looks at annual average. If you are within so many percent, your annual average flow is within so many percent of the stated flow in the permit, and that's the calculated underlying stated flow, you have to take certain steps. When you posed the question about capacity, it would have been easier for me to answer if you had asked for what you expect your average annual flow to be, what you expect your peak daily flow to be, but it wasn't. So I had to make an assumption what you really meant. So I made that assumption, will we reach and the numbers I posted in the future, will the average peak monthly flow be at that level? And I believe the peak monthly flows will be at these levels. Will be the annual average flows, which are the trigger points in permits, be anywhere near these levels? No, I do not believe that to be the case. So if you like to refine your question, we will give you a refined answer.
Very good. Can you just submit your question to?
It's not really a question. I just have to say this is.
State your name again.
Frances Kelleher. The problem with trying to write a very specific question is you're going to give us a very specific answer, but that might not be the exactly right question to ask. So maybe you say ambiguous, but I'm going to call it general. I mean, we need you to help us understand what's the deal. And if you can explain things in a better way so that we can understand, we're not going to run into issues with exceeding federal and or state regulations on maximum amounts of contaminants, so on and so forth, then please just give us that information without us having to, write down very specific type questions, which we might not be saying it in the exactly right way. And then you give us a sort of a little footnote thing that isn't like, there's no, again, basis for that information. Where did it come from? What's driving it? So we're really looking, I feel like I'm looking for you to be honest with us and give us a full good picture of all these different things.
Thank you, Frances.
And I think, as you found, the way we compiled the answers here was by both having listened to what was said and the questions. So we're not trying, look, I'm not a lawyer. No insult intended, Alex. But we certainly will try to glean from the conversation and the question, but without, some sort of general specificity, we're not sure we're on the right path, and we could then frustrate matters by answering a totally different question. So it's a two-way street. But we're not trying to play wordsmith. We're trying to be, and as you've seen, we provide the responses, but it's really the dialogue that helps to clarify and taking questions, so.
Sam, can you submit your questions to it? No? Well, then come on up, but you don't have 6 minutes.
Okay. Quick question. On your presentation, point of clarification, you said that you would be designing your plant to the city's plant's performance. Do you mean actual performance or the permit performance?
Obviously to the permit performance.
Okay, that's a big difference.
But I feel, knowing what I know about the city's technology and the technology we intend to apply, I truly believe, and I hope my engineering friends will back me up, that we have the ability to exceed
I don't disagree with that.
the nutrient limits by.
It said the city's performance.
Yes.
The performance is the actual performance to me. Secondly, I think I raised a question about the city using GHD in this matter. My concern last month was not about the engineering, and I think it's probably fine to have somebody else look at it. It was about the financial parts of it. I see these folks as the buyer and the city as the seller. And with due respect, I don't think you know what you've got to sell at this point. I think you need some advice on that and how to get the best bang for your buck or to get the most out of it. But I also think at the same time, somebody's from the city's got to represent the city to push the consultant in the right direction too. I mean, just don't turn them loose. But again, I don't think you really, at this point, given, do you use the costs that the city paid for or the cost of the outfall that was built, or is it what it would take to replace it? You need some, I think, advice on that, and you can't get it from GHD because they're advising these people who are the buyer. How can they can't represent both? Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Mayor Andrew Williams, would you like to say anything or put you on the spot?
I would like to thank the commission for having the bodies in today, again, to continue the dialogue, and congratulations to the new commissioners, and good luck with the new role. It's fun. But the other thing I'd like to mention is, Todd and I are native Sussex Countyans, and we've known each other for several decades now. And these weren't conversations, obviously, we had back in high school. We didn't anticipate things like sea level rise and issues, and we certainly weren't weighty topics that we talked about. But I would just like to say, to former Mayor Cooper's point, if Todd's going to represent us, I'm more than happy with that. I think Todd's is a credit to the county. He's diligent, he digs in, and I'm very appreciative that he is actually our county administrator. So again, thank you for this opportunity, and look forward to continuing the dialogue.
Thank you, Mayor. With that, thank you to everybody. Please expeditiously send us your questions so that we
Mayor,
can
are
pass
you coming
them.
back to the commissioners?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so send your questions in as soon as possible. And bring it back to this table. Did you want us?
Yeah. Thank you for the dialogue today. I think it was very helpful. I'm probably the simplest minded person on this commission. And it feels to me like we've got a bit of a ways to go. And whether we get there in time that's allotted seems questionable to me. There are a lot of questions. One of the things that was said in the last couple of minutes is that you need a go-ahead by the end of the year, a go or no-go by the end of the year, and the legal agreements can come later. Actually, in my experience, the legal agreements actually help decide whether there's a no-go or no-go, because the devil is always, always, always in those details, always. So as a commissioner, for me, what matters is what's in those legal agreements. Because what we wouldn't want to do is say we're going to go, and then we end up in a spot, down the line, having spent lots and lots of time and lots of money for something that ends up being a fail. So that's that. The other thing I wanted to say is I don't know whether $20 million is a lot of money or a little money. And at face value, it sounds like a lot of money. But when I hear that the contract that we're anticipating would be in perpetuity, it sounds like a little money. So I don't know if it's a good price. I don't know at all if it's a good price. And I think we've got a lot to learn in order to know whether it is a fair price. And simple questions for me like, okay, well, if this is $20 million and we're anticipating this amount of flow to go through, and I might be using the wrong words, but forgive me for that. Well, at what point do we reach the full capacity of the City of Rehoboth Beach's outfall, and then we have to replace that? Does this anticipate the cost of doing that? I don't know. I don't know the answers to these questions. But it seems like we do have a lot to learn before we can make any reasonable conclusion about what we're going to do. I didn't think that at the last meeting, but after this meeting, I think we've got a long, long ways to go.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think to Commissioner Preston's point, I'd like a confirmation from you all. I think it's not correct that this agreement would be in perpetuity from your perspective. I think I heard that it is 25 years is what you're looking for, at which time it would be, there's an option for a renewal and there would be another financial component at that time. Can you confirm that that is how you see this?
Thank you, Commissioner. What we outlined in our response is that a couple of things. We would want the agreement to mirror the timeline of the current agreement, just so we're on similar terms and we're not dealing with that in the future. So that mirrors the 25 and 25. However, as Mr. Panetta said, when we make these connections, that's forever. They're going to take their plant and decommission it and remove it. So they don't have any other options at that point. So for the legal terminology, we need to have something in perpetuity, whether it goes every 25 years and renews automatically or renews with notice. We'll need the agreements to look like they are forever.
Sorry for interrupting you, and sorry for stepping on your time here, but substantively, a contract that renews every 25 years without renegotiation, what's the point? It's just a renewal.
Well, certainly if there are, let's say, outside agency reviews that come in that look at our permits and we have to react to something that we didn't have to react to 25 years from now, that would be a reason for us to renegotiate and have to deal with that.
So at the 25-year marks, let's just say, there would be renegotiation?
Well, we would have to put that in the legal document. I'm not saying that that's what our thoughts are today. None of us will be here 25 years from now to even worry about that. But our thoughts were just to make sure that the timing is mirrored between two agreements. And I also want to say, Commissioner, our proposal is a one-time payment today for this agreement. Whether or not the agreements consider future payments at 25 plus 25, we haven't even thought about that. What we're proposing today is a one-time payment of the $20 million.
And just to clarify, I don't know if I was misinterpreted, but when I said by the end of the year we needed a go, no-go, I fully agree. And what I said was that the legal agreement, the I's don't have to be dotted and the T's don't have to be crossed, but the framework of that agreement needs to be agreed to by all parties because, as we all know, the devil's in the details in those documents. Yeah. So, our board would never sign off on something or make a decision if there were still major agreement issues that weren't confirmed. So what I was trying to say was that by the end of the year, we're looking for a firm confirmation that without whatever little details need to be worked out, we know we have a path to proceed.
Well, I guess my only reaction to that is we will not get there in 1 or 2 meetings. And if that's what we're anticipating having between now and the end of the year, my view is we will not get there. Just so you know.
All right.
This is going to take a lot more discussion than 1 or 2 meetings. A lot. In public forum. Certainly not behind the scenes.
My last comment, and I'll defer to the Public Works Director and City Manager on how we move forward with this topic, but understanding what the additional capacity, the impacts it's going to have on our outfall, the additional maintenance, the wear and tear, I think is very important in knowing when things need to be replaced, what the cost of that may be, in us evaluating what financial aspect of this agreement there may be. And we need a third party to do that. I don't know when the appropriate time is or what the appropriate process for that is, but for me, that's one of the most important aspects here.
Yeah, I agree.
Anybody else?
I had one comment. I thank you all for being here. I certainly appreciate this is fact-finding and fact disseminating, and which I really appreciate. And I just want to make a comment about some of the issues that we've been dealing with over the past months. And I think it's incumbent upon us to be transparent in all cases, but in this particular case, this is a complicated issue. I've been very fortunate. I'll share. I have visited the waste treatment plant here, and I encourage you all, if you have any interest in this whatsoever, to see how this works. And there's so much commentary that I get from the public and other people, and it comes out in this room. But we're basically dealing with wastewater. This is a highly water involving process. And I think a lot of people think it's, dare I say, more solid than it really is. And I think that's the issue that that I feel like we have to deal with, which is getting the public to come along with really what we're dealing with here. I echo the comments that Commissioner Preston is making. This is going to be a complex issue, but we got to we can't get ahead of the public in terms of what we think is the best deal for us. And there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of considerations here. I'm thinking, and maybe this is really wrongheaded of me, but possibly the next Tedder Talk, might we consider a little public understanding, or just a very basic understanding of how the wastewater system that we have here, which we own, works, and that we can do in conjunction with the deliberations and things that we have to make. So that's my bit.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Just one thing, I appreciate your time today and all the information provided, and the answers to my questions are very helpful. Obviously, they lead to other questions, but we'll get to those. Mr. Lawson, you started off your comments this morning with it will be our team to provide responses and additional responses, what have you. I turned to the city manager and the mayor, and not for a question answered right now, but I would like to know who makes up our team, their roles and responsibilities, and including in that a schedule or calendar of some target dates that we should meet along the way, not to necessarily meet your requirements, but also our requirements to keep this process moving. We have a reputation of a long discussions and then reaching a conclusion and then coming back the next meeting and changing our minds. So I would appreciate us having a roadmap that we at least have some path to follow. We may not follow it, which is our, sometimes happens with us, but to have some type of laid out path, decision process, a decision tree, and a calendar for those decisions to be made, I think it would be very beneficial in this decision making.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks to everybody here for, don't forget to get those questions in soon, and that would include commissioners. If you have any questions. Todd, Tom, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll- Our next bit of business will be a new business status update on Rehoboth Beach Patrol Headquarters Restroom Facility and temporary restrooms. Henry, let's set up and wait a minute for them to.
Yeah.
Business status update on Rehoboth Beach Patrol Headquarters and combination restroom facility and temporary restrooms. Henry?
Morning. So EDS was here 2 months ago giving an update. We really didn't talk about the temporary restrooms. This is really the first time since they've been up that going to go in detail on them. So going to talk current status of the Beach Patrol headquarters, and at the end go into the temporary restroom update. A couple of these slides I'm actually kind of plagiarizing, where this is one similar to what EDIS had last month. That the partnership between the city, the general contractor, Delmarva Veteran Builders, EDIS, our construction management firm, and neighboring properties. That's been very important. We have biweekly meetings at the caucus room every other Wednesday, and they've been attended well by the neighboring properties. As well as obviously the city, Delmarva Veteran Builders, EDIS. We go over potential schedule as well as issues that have had, and have had very good dialogue at those meetings. One thing also really want to put out is the safety. The general contractor, knock on wood, has had no safety-related incidents on the project at this time. And you know, we keep the standards high with our EDIS on site, and when I go in there, the expectations are very high for proper wearing of PPE as well as best practices on a construction site. Currently, the opening date is not at risk, barring anything major happening. It was put out at the last meeting that there were basically 3 months of contingency built in, but with all the piling issues we had, that basically ate up a month of the contingency.
Remind us what the projected opening date is?
Well, we keep putting out that it will open by start of the season next year. The initial date was the end of February, that it would be substantially complete, but that has slipped a month. The next major milestone, hopefully will occur early next week, is pouring the concrete slab on the first floor. This is another slide that I plagiarized from my predecessor when he presented the bids last year. The engineer's estimate was just under 4.7 million. There were 3 bidders for the project, and the lowest bid was Delmarva Veteran Builders at just under 4.9 million. So as you can see there, their bid was 620,000 less than the next lowest bidder. Actually, I'll go over the change orders. A lot of these were discussed in the last meeting, the ones that are annotated, that have the yellow fill. Since then, we've approved several other change orders, numbers 11, 14, and 16. 11 being for the revised foundations, having to put more piles in due to the debris that was found. And 14, to having to vacuum and camera an 8-inch storm line that was found during the excavation, and adding of a time capsule. Number 6 is still being negotiated between our construction management firm, DVB, and the city. That work was actually done in February, was adding additional water valves to be able to isolate the building from the other properties. And that's actually come out, we've actually used that before where we would have had to shut water off to the Admiral Hotel for several hours if those valves were not installed. So that will be in the neighborhood of about $65,000. And again, that work has already been done, but we're still negotiating it. Is there any question? I'm going to go into the full budgeting now, but any questions on the change orders?
There are a few numbers missing in addition to 6, 3, 12, 13, 15.
Yeah, 3 was one that was not used. I don't recall what 12 and 13 are.
And 15?
And 15.
I assume they do have numbers associated with them?
Yeah, and the cost of those, I brought out 6 in particular because of the cost of it was pretty significant compared to the others.
You said that is 65,000 is being negotiated. Is that negotiated among what parties?
Between DVB, EDIS, and the city.
Thank you.
So here's the original budget, again, was just under 4.9 million. We have owner contingencies of 250,000, owner allowances of 60,000. There was a security IT allowance of 135,000. So if you add the change orders into the original contract, you get the current contract total of just under 5.5 million. We used 31,000 in contingencies. And the $60,000 in owner allowances are still there. The $60,000 in allowances, 15,000 of it is for boardwalk repair, 20,000 is for testing and inspection, 10,000 for utility relocation, and 15,000 for existing building head anchors, which is basically where the building concrete will tie into the boardwalk. So that will still have to be determined, and I will probably be using that. And as far as the boardwalk, our intent right now is to replace the boardwalk in front of the building. You know, we'll have a beautiful building in several months, and you know, we may as well take the opportunity to replace the planks, the 20-foot section that gets us to the middle of the boardwalk. So, any questions on the budget status? Next slide, I was going to go into the temporary restrooms. So, is there anything on the construction of the building?
So the temporary restrooms is a completely separate budget from the Beach Patrol building?
They're both under CIP, under Comfort Stations for 2025, but we've been keeping the numbers separate.
But those were not included in the $4,897,000?
That's correct. It's a completely separate line item.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I wanted to go over the timeline on this. Back in February 29th, the city received quiet title on the lots C and D surf house lots, which is where the restrooms temporary restrooms are located. We had to apply for a DENREC approval, Shoreline and Waterway Division, for installation of a temporary structure. And that was received on March 21st. So we had a lot of work to do in a short amount of time in order to get them ready. See, we really couldn't do anything until we had that approval from DENREC, just some prep work, but then that's when it started. And it was a project that really took quite a lot of time on effort on a lot of parties to get it going. So part of it was picking the rental units. Several companies were checked out, and we wound up going with United Rentals, and they also provide the rental for the Beach Patrol trailer. Excuse me. So between mid-April and mid-May, we were doing construction and setup. May 1st, the 3 trailers arrived, the temporary restrooms and the Beach Patrol trailer, and our contract has us renting them for 5 months through the end of this month. We opened on May 24th. We had hoped to open a couple weeks earlier, but we had transformer issues, Delmarva power transformer issues, and we weren't able to open until the Friday before Memorial Day. So September 22nd is our planned last day of operation. That's the last day of operation for the Beach Patrol. So we will commence breakdown the day after. Any questions on the? Okay, here's the cost. We had $100,000 budgeted in FY25 for it. The total is right now is about $160,000. It costs more than anticipated. $67,000 is the rental of the restroom trailers, $7,000 the Beach Patrol trailer. We did a ground penetrating radar survey and some survey work also, which was $2,000. $23,000 for the electrical and communications. There's communications at the line at the Beach Patrol trailer, and it's been about $30,000 so far for installing the water and the sewer lines, and we've had numerous service calls and modifications on it. And back to the electrical, we're initially looking at actually tying the electrical. We approached the VIA if we could potentially tie into their panel and hook up a sub panel, but with the loads determined that wasn't the best option. And also it adds a more, lack of a better word, permanence to the lots, that right now they have water, sewer, and electrical capabilities. Also, as far as the sewer lines, we've had numerous service calls and modifications, where we had quite a bit of clogs. We were not able to just have the tank valves open. It's kind of like an RV trailer where you want to make sure that the tanks are pretty full before you dump them, or else you run the risk of significant clogs. So our streets department goes there a couple times a day, dumps the tanks. We were, during the summer, dumping them once in a while, twice a day on busy weekends. And personally, I spent a lot of time there with Harry Caswell. He modified the effluent piping from when the trailers first came. So that has helped significantly with clogs, where we had a lot less now than we did, say, the first 2-3 weeks of operation. EDIS helped us quite a bit with this, but it was asked about the budgeting. I specifically asked EDIS to allocate their time. If they were working on the temporary restrooms, have it marked as such and billed as such. Not to, so, but say if they're a representative their construction soup was here 8 hours a day. He may do a couple hours on the restroom, a couple hours on the beach patrol construction. We purchased a shed for the restroom supplies that the city owns now, and we did $1,000 in porta potty rentals for the construction and for Memorial Day weekend. We had, I think, that was the first week when it was open. We weren't sure how it was going to work really, so we, little bit of insurance, we rented several porta potties. And $3,500 for fencing and landscaping. Pennsylvania Railroad's been a very good partner working with us on it, and we did put a fence going across, delineating where the city property is and where their property is, and there's just an opening where their guests can come in and out of. A lot on the cost is it was over 225 feet from the water and sewer and electrical and the transformer to the trailers. So a lot of excavating, directional boring for the electrical. And again, it's been, I think our rapport between everyone with the VIA and the Pennsylvania Railroad has been, has really helped out. And we did run into, like with anything else, something new, you may run into some problems. We did our best to correct them. Walter, I think the first weekend you mentioned to me about there wasn't adequate signage pointing people to the restrooms, and he was right. So we did correct that and put additional signage on the construction fence, as well as the communications manager putting more information on the city web page about the restrooms being open. And early on, we pivoted to really try to make these as nice as possible. They're still temporary restrooms, but make them nice as possible for our guests, residents, and the, excuse me, and the beach patrol. So the way it, as mentioned, the streets department is the one that monitors the tanks. They're the ones, they put the odor tablets to prevent odor when they dump the tanks, and that helps significantly. Our building and grounds crew in Public Works is the one that brings the supplies to the restroom. And, excuse me, to the shed, and the company that does the cleaning of the restrooms, all the Rehoboth Avenue and Delaware and Grove Park, they're the ones that clean it. So I get calls or texts from time to time that there's an issue. We have, and then the Blakes their people will go, we'll have them check it out. And Caswell Plumbing they've been very good. Had an agreement with them that early on that if there was an issue, they would send someone right away. And that has happened. And even during the 4th of July, it cost a fair amount of money, but, excuse me, during the 6th of July, during fireworks, we figured it was worth it to have a plumber on site. So there was a Caswell plumber on site for about 8 hours, from I think 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. until after fireworks, in case there were issues.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is any of that, the piping and that's staying in the ground, right? I mean, you're not
Yes.
moving that, right?
Yeah, what the intent is they'll winterize the piping and cap it off, remove the trailers. Now, and I've also asked that the electrical not be shut off just the breaker there, but we'll have to work with Delmarva Power. I want to disconnect it at the transformer.
Okay.
Okay, and then We'll put a fence around the electrical panels, just, kind of the beach fencing. And we'll leave that there in case they're needed again next year. Hopefully they won't be. And then the intent then would be to remove that fencing and take down the panels. And the city owns all those panels now.
But I mean, would there be any need or potential need to have that for a future kind of event type thing or something where we would need temporary capacity or whatever, or is that just, that's not going to happen after you get the facility open?
Hopefully not, but that's kind of the intent, what we're looking about it, why we made them fairly permanent structures where they can be removed. But if there's a need to bring back, say, one trailer for a weekend, it would obviously take some work to do, but it would be something that would be easily doable.
Right, okay.
Is there any questions on this before I move on this slide? Okay, as mentioned, when this first started and when we realized the complexity of it, and then it was going to take a lot more time, quite a bit of time, I asked EDIS to document their time for financial accuracy between the beach patrol and this. And if their superintendent was on site, we were billed for one or the other. Also had mentioned that we had some pretty significant clogs. The streets department manager and I, we cleared quite a few of them ourselves. And we also, but sometimes we had to call Caswell, but after modifying the effluent piping, those had been minimized pretty significantly. We have had some minor vandalism, broken doors, broken toilets, and that was usually after the beach patrol left for the day. So we made the decision to closing time at 7 p.m., where the cleaning contractor would come in, inspect, clean, and close the doors. And then they would, in the morning, I believe at 6 a.m., they go to Rehoboth Avenue first, and then Delaware, and then they'd make their way to the temporaries to open them. And again, the tank monitoring was crucial. There was a couple-week learning curve on that. We, really wanted to, make sure we were draining the tanks at a level that was, not too low, so we didn't run into clogs, but we didn't want to fill up the tanks too high. And United Rentals has been good. They've come several times and vacuumed out the tanks per our request, and that is included in the price for the contract. Excuse me. So the benefits, first one is the obvious one, restrooms for our guest residents and the beach patrol during the construction of the beach control building. It's an inconvenience, there's no doubt about it, and trying to minimize it by making them fairly nice facilities, and whenever issues come up, to respond quickly. And there is the infrastructure in place if needed for future projects, or to bring restroom on site for a large event if that's desired. Again, that would take a lot of coordination, but it's doable. And the infrastructure is in place. Obviously, if the city decides to sell the property, potentially increasing the value of the property.
Any questions?
Just thank you very much. I know that In talking with many of the lifeguards down there, it was problematic at times, but you all handled it very well. But it was a great convenience. A lot of people that were on the beach certainly enjoyed the location of those restrooms. And I just didn't know if there had been any, looking at the $159,000 invested in that, it appears that generally about $92,000 was in infrastructure. The rental of the trailers was $67,000, which breaks out to about $450 a day for the rental. And I just was in any consideration of maintaining that for the next season, since we've overcome kind of the problems and got a process down and people know it's there and what have you, and expanding services. Just something that perhaps to consider in the next budget cycle. Again, we've invested $92,000 in infrastructure that's there, and yes, that does enhance the resale value. But I honestly think that somebody's looking at property on the ocean, that electrical and sewer are not a major consideration when purchasing land like that. So again, it's established in a lot of our visitors' mind that we do have a facility down that end now. I don't think a lot of them understand that it was temporary for the season. So next budget cycle, just something to consider. We know that the beach is a popular place and trying to enhance it. The more facilities that we have, I think it becomes more and more popular. So again, I would like to see that as a consideration for next year's budget cycle. Thank you.
Anybody else? Walter? Walter and then Jay? And then Carolyn?
I'll use the chair if you don't mind.
Yep. Pull that microphone to her, you did, Walter.
Walter Birmingham, 123 Hanopen Avenue. I don't know who he was speaking to, but you should all know this is the first time that we have heard theoretically any of this. And this all started out, and most of the excesses were your own damn fault. Because when it came to questions, really there's no questions. And now you talk about infrastructure there for next year. But let's start out, and I'll try to keep under the 3 minutes. There was no final plans. You added geothermal wells and everything else. There were no final plans. We've never seen the final plans to the best of my knowledge. A $55,000 valve to cut off the building is ridiculous. If you really tried for transparency, you had on here number 6 is under negotiation and some other things. We go back, no final plans. You had your non-ed rentals, so you had 67,000 and another 7,000. Why wasn't it extended beyond the required? We provide lifeguard protection through the end of September. I made that motion years ago, and I guess there's going to be no lifeguards. There's poor planning. You had trailers that came in. Most of the people in this room are city, but you had not a direct connection to, you flush the toilet and it goes down the drain. They had tanks that had to be emptied several times a day. We find out today that the streets department did that. Clogging, that's a separate issue. I don't know why that was the case, but a properly installed sewer system, you would not have had any of that problem. You never told us EDIS was going to be the construction management company. It never came before a public meeting. It's all your fault. You have water and sewer and you put electric in. It has no value to a new property coming in there. The city's not going to sell it. You had outside contractors, fine. You had streets department. They were going to, somebody was going to have to take care of the bathrooms that were there beforehand before you tore them out. So that's not an additional expense. Caswell was very good. How much was his bill for being there? And for fireworks, fireworks probably would have had somebody in the men and ladies room for fireworks. So you come back to it all that this is a fluff discussion and it should have happened beforehand.
If you're worried about next year, you could go to CDI and have a couple bathrooms put in instantaneously. You don't have to go to the West Coast and get something. They have beautiful stainless steel restrooms. But all of this, folks, is a waste of goddamn time. And it's a waste of our time, and you still have no representation, and we don't know who's making the decisions from the board, who is making the decisions from the board. And this is a question, this is not citizen comment. Why aren't we allowed an item? Who goes to the meetings? Who attends the meetings? Who votes at the meetings? Whose vote counts? And it's all back on you. And unfortunately, Henry, you capitulated and helped to develop a nice report, but it's worthless because you're all responsible, every one of you, and not the newly elected commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Jay, did you have?
I'm Jay LeGree. I live at 7 Prospect Street. I have 2 small questions. It may, you never know how things go. One of these days, DENREC may relent and let us build a small restroom on the ocean side of the boardwalk, which would just be great. If you've been to Cape May, you can see that. And we'll have the plumbing there already. So that may come to pass. You just don't know. I have a real serious question. When you dealt with Pennsylvania Railroad, who exactly did you deal with? Thanks, Mayor.
Anybody else? Carolyn, come ahead.
Carolyn Diefendorfer, city resident. Just 2 things. If they would be considered for next year, would they be considered to be in place for Sea Witch? We're going to have 100,000 people here that weekend. Might be nice if there were some restrooms at that end for Sea Witch. But what I would love to see is a schedule posted, maybe on the Reach Out Rehoboth project site, that gives us high-level milestones to be hit with the beach patrol construction, so we can see if it looks like we're going to hit the mark or not. You know my husband. We go by there often. He's like, there's no way it's going to get done. And I just think it would be nice if we knew high level what we should see happening when, because from a layman's perspective, it doesn't look like much got done this summer, but I'm sure it did. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Craig?
Craig Thier, 102 Laurel Street. I believe I heard you say the timeline has slipped a month from February to, the completion date has slipped a month from February to March.
That's correct.
Okay. I'm trying to think back, what was it, a couple of months ago that we were given the February completion date?
When EDIS gave the presentation 2 months ago, they mentioned that it has slipped, that end of February was the initial completion date, and it had slipped back a month.
Okay, so
They did say that then, 2 months ago.
So they did say us then. Okay, all right, great. Okay, so that clarifies that. My next question was really, Carolyn beat me to it. So I'm sure EDIS in their project plan has high-level milestones. The next one that you mentioned in your presentation here was the pouring of the concrete slab. So really kind of echoing what she was saying, if you probably have them, but high-level milestones with dates. So we just have some visibility into, when we expect the milestones, and do we see do we hit those or not? With the concrete slab, the pouring of the concrete slab, which you referenced as the next major milestone, what is the date for the pouring of that concrete slab?
It's projected to be early next week.
Early next week. Okay, great. Last question is, you mentioned in the presentation you have biweekly meetings, and you listed, several groups or people. Do they all participate on a regular basis, or is it, people are absent?
The general contractor, the city, and the construction management firm are always there.
Okay.
And the partners excuse me, the businesses, sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. One is there just about every week,
Okay, perfect.
or
perfect.
excuse
So-
me, every meeting.
Yep, yep. So they're given the opportunity to participate.
Yes.
If they decide not to participate.
Yeah, that's something we did early on, maybe in February or March, where we invited them, and that was, that worked out well.
Okay, great. And from the city, who participates from the city? Yourself?
Yes, I do. I wasn't there at the last one. I was actually at that wastewater conference that I mentioned, and the city manager and assistant city manager went to that one, and the communications director, she's there often as well.
Okay.
As well as Captain Giles.
Okay. Question I'd prefer to ask EDIS directly, but I'll ask you. What's your comfort level that this will be done in time for next summer? I won't say end of March, but I'll say in time for next summer.
No, my comfort level is high in that. I actually had that discussion on Friday with their manager, JD, the senior manager that was here last week. Because I wanted to be able to, if asked a question like that, say the confidence level is high that it'll be open for next, the beginning of next season.
Okay. So the last one is really a comment, and it kind of almost ventures into the area of, trying to tell you how to do your job, and I don't want to do that. But back to the last question that I asked, which is I'd prefer to ask that question of EDIS than yourself. So they are our project manager.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anybody else? If not, we'll move on. Did you have anything?
I just wanted to say that Henry arranged for, and I took advantage of a walkthrough of the site last week with JD, and I had shared some of the same concerns that we do with meeting those deadlines. Now, I know JD is part of the construction, and this is his responsibility to answer these questions, but he felt very confident that the slab pour would go well. It was weather dependent, but looking at the weather in the next 30 days, that would work well. And then once they get that in, the subs will come in, and then the second floor slab pour is contingent again on weather, but they have a plan B to work through that if we go into cold weather. I'm sure that'd be a change order, but it will have an impact on the schedule. So I think JD, in working with Delmarva veterans, I felt very confident in what he was telling us, and he's a guy on the ground every day walking through it, and he was very positive about his crew and also the subs that were in there. So again, I just want to thank you for making that arrangement. It was very helpful to get eyes on it and see what's going on.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Henry. Appreciate your report, and your time commitment to that. With that, we'll move on to commissioner announcements or comments. Is there anything? If not, we'll move on.
Sorry, Stan, one other thing
Yes.
that I had mentioned in a workshop meeting previously with regards to the construction that's going on with the Beach Patrol, that we're going to face similar construction issues when the one Rehoboth Avenue, the Grotto Hotel, and also Bellhaven go up. And I believe that the city manager and assistant city manager are working on some plans to manage the impact of the boardwalk, because it's going to be demolition, it's going to be construction, et cetera, et cetera. But noting this ongoing communication bi-weekly meeting that is happening with the Beach Patrol, I think that is a model that perhaps could be followed with the individuals involved in One Rehoboth and also the Bellhaven during that construction. Because this is not only going to impact Baltimore, but Rehoboth Avenue, the bandstand, summer concerts, and Wilmington, Wilmington Avenue when Bellhaven goes into effect. So again, that bi-weekly meeting, I think, sounds as if it is very effective, and that communication level goes forward. So I hope that would be considered as part of the ongoing management of those projects on the boardwalk in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, commissioner announcements or comments, anything further? If not, review future meeting date. Today at 1 o'clock, there is a special meeting. We're anticipated to go into executive session. No actions will be taken out of that meeting, just in case you all were wondering whether to show up or not. Also, the next meeting beyond that is Friday, the 20th. That's our annual meeting, 2 o'clock for the Board of Commissioners, where we swear in our newest commissioners. With that, is there any additional citizen comment off topic?
When we did,
Jay, your
Jay
name?
LaGree, 7 Prospect, when we were building the outfall, we had weekly meetings and they were very helpful.
Thank you, Jay. Walter?
Walter Birmingham, 123 Hennepin Avenue. I direct the question to the mayor, and it's got to do with coming out of executive sessions. You go into executive session from the public session, and what do you do when you come out? Excuse me, I think I'm entitled to an answer. The public is at some point in time, because you come out and you go home.
Well, let's go through the whole process.
Okay, no, let's try
Let's
it
go
my
through the
way.
whole process.
Because what you do is, sorry, you don't like this because it affects you.
I'm trying
But
to answer you.
in this case, you walk out the door. So I sat at one of the meetings out here and I waited 45 minutes and Ed came out and I said, are you going to go back into public session? You go into executive session from a public session, and then you should come back into the room, and I'm telling you your business now, and you should come back and then you should adjourn the meeting. But if you're not going to come back into public session, you shouldn't have citizen comment at the end of your agenda. And if you have an agenda in front of you today for your executive meeting, you have citizen comment. Do you come back to public session for citizen comment?
Are you going to let me answer that?
No. And you know that, don't you?
Well, that's not true. Our process, everybody up here knows our process is after we're already, are you going to let me answer?
I haven't said anything. Are you worried? Do you each and every time? I've never read the minutes.
When we're in executive session and we come back out of executive session, we come back into this room. We then entertain and take a vote to come out of executive session back into public session. We conduct that vote, and obviously it's always favorable. And then if there is no further business to be conducted, which is usually outlined in the agenda, that there will or will not be additional discussion, then we adjourn the meeting at that time. However, there's a new requirement by the Attorney General's Office, Freedom of Information, that requires citizen comment. That is a dictate by the state, Freedom of Information Act. And so we had not been doing that up to a certain point. In our last Freedom of Information violation, we noted that. And so from that point forward, yes, the special meeting agendas have opportunity for public comment. So that then changes our procedure to come back into this room out of executive session, to vote to come back into public session. And if there's no further business for us, we still ask for the public comment. And what we do now is, if there's nobody in this room, members of the public, to witness that, of course, we generally have it taped correctly, but I also send a commissioner out into the hallway to see if there's anybody there, so that if somebody's sitting out there, they can be invited back. What?
Commissioner Ed knows what I was talking about.
So there was one instance, Walter, where no one checked the hallway to see if anyone from the public was waiting. We came in and we adjourned the meeting. We came out of executive session, adjourned the meeting, and I saw you, when leaving the room. We now check the hallway when we come back into this room to make sure that if someone's waiting, we get them.
We now, do that. Thank you.
Yes.
Anybody else? All righty, we'll move on to the next, which is adjournment. We'll adjourn this meeting at 12:09 p.m. Thank you very much.